to get going, everybody. I
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. The roll call, please, Amy.
Yes. Mr. Anise?
Present.
Mr. Arcuri?
Present.
Mr. Bova?
I used to be first.
Mr. Brodsky?
Here.
Mr. Ford? Mr. Coyne? Mr. D'Elia?
Here.
Mr. Ford?
Here.
Mr. Karam?
Here.
Mr. Mutolo?
Here.
Mr. Sampson?
Present.
And Ms. Susney?
Here.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. You have the draft March 21, 2022 minutes in your packet. Is there a motion to approve? Second. Thank you. Any corrections, deletions, additions? All those in favor?
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Thank you. In our packet, our first resolution is an award of contract. Eric?
Yep, for sure. This item that you have in front of you in your packets is for MVWA Core System Asset Renewal Replacement Project that we budgeted this phase for this year through IMF funds. This passed through Capital Committee in April's meeting, and to give a quick summary on what it entails, we regionalize, right? We have a lot of assets, some newer, some older, some very, very old. And we're looking at things from an energy performance, more of a design build perspective. We have a lot of work that needs to be done to renew some pretty core assets that we have, and what's the most efficient way of doing it, right? So this phase would incorporate essentially a facility analysis, energy audit, etc. Looking to move more so, like I said, into a design build mindset, but also taking into account energy performance initiatives across the board through pumping and motor systems, through building envelope enhancements that are overdue, and also just looking at lighting, etc. All in one package. So it's really a system-wide look, system-wide snapshot that this will give us.
Any questions for Eric regarding that?
I'll move it.
Thank you, Rocco. Thank you, Dave, second. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Thank you. Next is a word of contract. Phil?
So we're seeking use of some capital monies to do a specific project. And when I was talking with Pat about it, he said it's probably a good time just to review a little bit about where we are and where we need to go. So I just put together a couple slides to talk to the board a little bit about this pipe loop study and what you're about to take action on. So this really all stems from the lead and copper rule revisions, which the EPA promulgated in December of this past year. So we've always had a 90th percentile action level of 15 parts per billion. We're required currently to take 50 samples every 3 years, right? 45 of those have to be under 15 parts per billion, so 45 households. So the rule has changed now to put this trigger level in, which is 10 parts per billion. If you are over 10 but less than 15, you have to take some additional action, okay? The other change will be that you can only sample lead service lines, something that we predicted, and I have some data to talk about for that. That'll start in January of 2025. Currently, under the current rule, you can do 50% copper with lead solder or 50% lead. Another significant change is instead of taking the first sample, you have to take the 5th liter that comes out of your faucet. So it's going to be a little difficult to kind of communicate that to the residents that have to take these samples, and to make sure that they're doing this sequentially so that we have the correct sample. We have to go to 100 samples every 6 months initially from where we are now, again 50 every 3 years. you have to re-optimize your corrosion control treatment if you are above the 10 but less than 15, and you must evaluate the use of phosphates as a corrosion control treatment. There are find and fix provisions in the revisions, which essentially, if you have a house that's above 15 parts per billion or the action level, you have to try to identify what the cause is. You have to take some additional samples, and you have to take repeat samples within 5 blocks of the high level. There is a massive public awareness and education campaign that has to go out with mailers and notifications that go out about the health hazards related to lead. That has to be sent out annually to every house that has a lead service, or you do not know what the service material is made of. You have to develop for a lead service line inventory. So staff have been working on that for the last several months. We're making good progress on it. That has to be submitted to the state by October of 2024. And that has to be publicly available on our website so that anybody can see at any residence what the service line material is on both the customer side and the utility side. We have to develop a replacement program so that if you're above 15, you must replace 3% of your lead services annually. If you're above 10, you have to have a plan in place to replace somewhere less than 3. So that has to be approved by the state too, again, by October of 2024. Now, the one thing we know that EPA said is that they're really not satisfied with how far this went. So by 2024, they're going to come out with the lead and copper rule improvements. So we know that there's going to be changes coming to this. We certainly know that they're not going to be any less restrictive. The one we'll focus on for the action tonight will be to re-optimize your corrosion control treatment and then the use of phosphates. So this is a historical data from the lead and copper rule for the Water Authority. And you could see in the beginning the numbers were quite high. The lighter bars are the highest levels observed during the sampling. The lower bars are the 90th percentile, so the one that regulatory action was taken on. And you can see that it's dropped down over the years. So just some timeline elements to add to this. In 1992, the treatment plant went online. In 1992, we were also 3rd highest in the nation, the city of Utica's lead levels. In 1994, we got optimum corrosion control designation from the State Department of Health. So we were able to drop our numbers significantly by using our current treatment of elevating the pH and alkalinity of the water. The significant, which appears significant, is where the city of Utica ran the water supply prior to 1996 and afterwards the Water Authority. You would say, oh, well, look what a fantastic job the Water Authority has done. But right, it was the same personnel taking it from the same sample taps. It was optimizing the corrosion control that made the big difference, and also the reduction in the number of samples. Here we were taking 100 samples every 6 months, and since 1997, it's 50 samples every 3 years. The one significant change that I will point out is that in 2018 and 21, we anticipated the move to all lead services. So we only sampled lead services, and that's where you see the increase from 8 and 7 parts per billion up to 13 and 12. Remember, that'll be above the 10 parts per billion in the action limit, so we'll have to take this additional step, such as evaluating the use of phosphates. This was the PR in 1992 when you had those high lead levels. We don't need that today. It certainly won't be a comic in a newspaper, but it'll be on social media. So we've made tremendous progress since that day. And just for those that don't know, currently the Water Authority owns obviously the meter into the house and the remote interface, as well as from the curb stop out to the main where the service line joins into the water main. In between that, the service line is owned by the homeowners. Prior to 1976, the homeowner owned the entire main, but the city wanted to alleviate some of the cost of repairing mains, so after 76, the city took over, and now the Water Authority, from the curb stop out to the main. So where were we in terms of studying this? In 2013, my predecessor directed a study from CDM Smith, and that really came out and said phosphates would be a viable option for the Water Authority. And we were starting to move forward in that direction, but really we did not do a pilot on this. There was no place to do a demonstration study on it in just a portion of the distribution system. And we also didn't have a good public awareness and backout plan in place. So we didn't move forward, but now with the lead and copper rule revisions, we did in 2020, the board approved a desktop evaluation. So we looked at some historical system data from 2014 to 2020 at both the treatment plant as well as in the distribution system. Took a look at our lead and copper data over the term and developed some corrosion indices and some modeling. So what were the study conclusions? Well, the current strategy that we're using provides a stable, non-corrosive water that currently meets our needs. But the data, especially from 2018 and 21, suggests that we're not going to be able to meet the trigger level for the lead and copper rule revisions. So the evaluation of phosphates is prudent. It's required if you're over the 10. Now these are modeling results, so these aren't levels that were observed in the system, but the modeling that was done based through this study suggested that at our current pH we would have around 83 to 112 micrograms per liter of lead that could be released into the water. Again, those are model results, those are not our observed levels. By moving to the, by adding orthophosphate at the same pH, we significantly lower that release rate down to about 28 micrograms per liter. And at the optimal pH of a 7.8, we drop it even further to around a 17. We're not quite ready to make that leap from bullet 2 to bullet 3. So what are we asking you to approve tonight? It's a pipe loop study. It's going to take about 18 to 24 months. Denny, you probably remember when we harvested pipes back years ago. So we'll harvest lead service lines from the ground. We'll construct those, that pipe rig at the Kemble Street location, and we need time to acclimate those pipes. We'll do some analysis through Washington University in St. Louis, and then we'll introduce the orthophosphate and test those changes on our water and inorganics, specifically lead and copper release. So from the results of this, we'll develop our recommendation for the compliance with the rule, and of course, it'll have to be submitted to the Department of Health for approval. Just quickly, this is essentially what the study plan will be. We'll have 4 replicates of 3 different trains of our current. On top is our current treatment. And then 2A and 2B will be adding different levels of phosphates to the pipe loop and testing how they control inorganics release. So here are 2 pictures. The company that we're asking you to approve is Corona Environmental Consulting. They also directed some of the lead work that was done at the City of Denver. They provided these pictures of how they rigged their pipe loop. And so we'll be doing something similar to this as we move forward if approved tonight. So why pilot and why do it now? The time frame is shorter than it appears. It says we have until 2025. It's 2 years to do this study. By the time we get a recommendation, get approval from DOH, and then move forward with construction and installation of any treatment, if phosphates works, we'll be close to that time frame. We may be a little over it. So we have to do this because we have to watch for the unintended consequences. Whenever you change water chemistry or pH, you take a chance. Flint, Michigan is the example we all know about because it's most recent. But Tucson, Arizona in the 90s went from a groundwater source to a surface water source, massive discolored water throughout their system. And we don't have to go any further than Utica when we put the treatment plant online, and we had a biofilm issue, and there were total coliform violations throughout the system for a significant number of months. So we want to plan so that we don't see that. Well, why else? It's board precedent. We've always been ahead of the regulatory curve. The board has always had a proactive approach to these types of scientific decisions that we make. It's built into our strategic plan, and it's best for our customers. We need to prepare for any eastward expansion. The work that we're proposing to do with Corona, they're also working right now with Barton and LaJudas, the villages of Ilion, Herkimer, and Frankfurt, so that if that main moves forward and we end up supplying water to the east of here, we're better prepared to serve them without any disruptions. And of course, this has already received DOH approval, and they're encouraging us to take action right away. So, just a couple last-minute things. I had an opportunity to go down and do some advocacy work down in D.C., so I met with Stefanik and Congresswoman Tenney, looking for money for infrastructure funding. We're hoping that that works out in the end. So with the contingent from New York, saw I think 11 different congressional representatives and the two senators' offices. So we'll see how that goes. With that said, I could take questions now. My office is always open. You can always stop up or call if you want to take questions at a later date.
Very, very quick one. And do we have any lead coming into our system out of Hinkley?
There's no lead in the water itself. So all the lead that's in the water is contributed from the service line itself.
The distribution system somewhere.
The service line, not even in the main. The service line from the main into the house or in the premise plumbing itself.
Okay, so any lead is not originating from Hinkley or our system or up in the hills?
That is correct.
Out of the West Canada, et cetera.
That is correct.
Okay. And you've tested for that?
Yes.
Are we able to identify where the lead problem is specifically, whether it's inside the house, the line leading up, or it's not our own pipes, but
So we can't right now, but what I am doing this summer, my staff is working on it now, is we're going to do a little side study of this, and we're going to do sequential sampling from 15 households who we sampled before. So we're going to take 15 samples in a row, and then we'll analyze those, and then you'll be able to see where the peak is. So you could say, okay, in the first liter, it's most likely the kitchen tap, right, or the tap. If you get to the 7th liter, well, now you're in the service line. You know, we could do some back of the envelope calculations to determine where exactly that would be in the service line.
if we eliminated all the lead, it probably never eliminate what's inside the house, but leading up to us. If there was nothing other than good piping, would we still have a problem?
Could. We could, because, I mean, the premise plumbing, right, these are typically older homes. Premise plumbing, any brass fixtures, leaded brass fixtures, those, you know, you would have to do a wholesale swap out throughout the premise, and that's not our business.
Does the lead service line, does the contamination of the lead, is that transient only in one direction to the house, or does that impact the distribution?
No, so there's really no pushback into the distribution main. The pressure and the flow of the water will move it. If there's a disruption in the pipe itself, that's going to flow into the home. And so there's some best practices that we put on our website, and we encourage customers to do whenever they call with a concern about lead. Cleaning your aerators, running your water in the morning, the pinky test, putting your finger under the faucet until it doesn't get any colder.
Are there best practices that are outside of our domain, but might be part of codes in communities, where reconstruction is happening, not new construction, because obviously new construction is different, but whenever reconstruction is going on, are there code changes that could be recommended that would help provide improvement at the household level?
Well, I'm sure there are. There are even just disclosures of lead service line material is something that's being talked about now. So whenever there's a transaction or if there's a codes permit that's issued, that you would have to disclose the service line material and any past data related to it.
I'm wondering if we should be publicizing the fact this is going to fall on us the minute the numbers work against us publicly. It falls on the Water Authority. When I'm wondering if we should be involving municipalities so that when they authorize reconstruction in a house, like in a kitchen, that there's a requirement that they have to test and replace pipes. it's just, it's,
Assuming that they're applying for a permit. I mean,
right,
'cause
assuming
that's
they're
only-
applying for a permit, which basically you're
Not a
dealing
bad
with
idea.
contractors more than you're dealing with homeowners. But the bottom line is it's just one more step to try and eliminate the problem. And that's just a concern. The other concern I have is cost, obviously, and at some point you're going to have a number as to how much it'll cost to replace all the piping that you would want to replace, the lead piping.
It's a lot more today than it was a year ago.
Right, but at some point we're going to have a number, and I think we need to have some estimate of that number in front of us when we start spending money on other solutions to this problem, to make sure that we're addressing the best practice and the best cost. I've been involved.
Yes, well, so there are some national estimates out there. We've done a little work ourselves. So you're looking at $5,000 to $6,000 a service line. Once we finish our inventory, if we assume there's 3,000, right, you need quite a bit of money.
But we're going to need other money anyway as we do other things, and then we're going to be making changes. We should have that number in front of us.
Is there, when you talk about from the service line, from the curb to the entrance of the beginning of the home, that's owned by the homeowner, correct? So if that's the part that has to be replaced, is that cost go on to the homeowner?
So the revisions itself says that if you replace your side, you must offer to replace their side, but it doesn't say you have to do it or you have to finance it. So, right? So there's a lot of discussions that have been had over the years about the best way to do that. You know, there's a lot of ARPA money that's out there now that says if you replace a lead service line with federal funding, you have to replace the entire service. We can't do that. We can't go on a private, service and replace it right now. So that's there's some disconnect between the state and the federal government that we need to work through. There are companies out there that sell a third-party insurance. There are ways to work around that. There are other utilities that have found a way to work around that outside of New York. I don't know of any inside of New York other than taking over the service line.
And that's a good thing not to do. Because they're going into the houses, if some of them have finished basements, family rooms, they have to take handling down, drywall, all kinds of stuff to get the new service in there. And you don't want to get involved in that.
Anything else for Phil? Someone care to move the resolution as presented? Thanks. Second there. Any further discussion or comments? All those in favor?
Aye.
Anybody opposed?
This is good.
Thank you. Thank you, Phil.
So big.
Next, Ann was going to address us about the memo now that we have regarding New York State Low-Income Household Water Assistance Program. The authorities collected, am I seeing this right, Jim? Over $240,000 through this program with 268 customers. Y'all can take a look at that, and when Ann's in next month or next meeting, you can ask her questions if you have any. We have the first quarter investment statement, Jim.
I think it's in your miscellaneous part of your binder. Especially for the newer members, public authority law requires that we provide you a quarterly investment statement with the balances that we've invested, with the income and expenses associated with those balances. So we will be providing on a quarterly basis these statements to you.
Any questions regarding the statement? Do we approve this, Jim?
You approve it. I just want to make a quick comment. The 2001A and 2001B bonds, your next statement, they'll be gone because they're being paid off. So those balances, the sinking funds that we pay down the debt, those balances will be gone, and any money that's left over for the reserve money We're going to move those into other sinking funds, and so we don't have to provide those funds going forward for the next month, essentially. So we are making progress in paying these balances off.
Well, that'll help reduce then whatever we expense for it, right?
Yeah, because we send down funds every month for debt service, and so at least for the next month, we have this excess money that we can just put toward that amount that we send down.
Any other questions for Jim on this? Someone care to make a motion to approve? Thanks, Rich. Second. Thanks, Bruce. Any further comments or discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Thank you. And while you're standing there, Jim, we'll run through the February and March highlights of the financial report.
February and March, you have statements for. We could not get April out. We will have it for you next time. We were almost done. We just didn't want to give it to you before we were entirely completed. But good news is consumption is up 10%, primarily because of Wolfspeed. They started in March, actually. They really ramped things up, so our consumption is up 10%. Revenue is up for the year, $400,000 compared to this time last year. So that's good. Cash flow, in January we make a lot of payouts for various things, including insurance and other things. We make that up over time. At the end of March, we were pretty much at a break-even basis. If you go even further into April, I've already looked at the numbers and we're ahead of the game. So we want to sock aside more money as time goes on because we have some bills to pay later on in the year, some retirement money and things like that. So all the indicators are looking positive right now, which is good.
We know right now, though, even with Wolfspeed, they're not up to their maximum output that they've projected.
I tell you, for the month of March, they were higher than what we anticipated in their consumption. And so if they continue to ramp up, they're going to be much higher than what we had budgeted for. So that could be a good thing. The receivable looks very nice. It'd be great if they actually pay.
Any questions for Jim? Thanks, Jim. We also had a capital projects committee meeting. Eric's just going to give a quick overview of that.
Yep, two things real quick. I wanted to mention, this actually was after our capital meeting, that we received award of a $3 million grant to fund some additional raw water transmission main work. So that's obviously good news when you get quote-unquote free money. But we all know there's always hurdles attached with that, so we'll go through the process, and as we need board involvement, we'll keep you looped in. The item that we wanted to discuss quick today, Ms. Cesny brought up to our attention about the Schuyler Water District and some changes that have been ongoing with that project. As you remember, the board committed $50,000 previously. It was around, I think it was 2001, 2002, that $25,000 and another $25,000 was committed to. So, being a numbers guy, I was looking at it. I was like, well, geez, committed $50,000 back then. That's not $50,000 today. So, looking at just inflationary costs year to year, the federal numbers that are published, I had an equivalent dollar amount of around $75,000. And that got brought up during the capital committee meeting, and at that point we just kind of said, okay, it's a board discussion at this point if we want to do that, or if there's additional discussions that want to be had. So that's my 10-cent tour on this, and I guess I'll leave it open for Ellis and the board.
Betty, do you have something more you'd like to?
Yes, I did. Actually, the current project is larger, includes another road, two roads actually, Newport Road, part of Newport Road, as well as Skyview Lane. And this, I believe, is going to be, with the cost of, because of COVID, of course, and some other issues. The cost is becoming very, very expensive, and the town board is really looking for more funding because it's just, we don't know if we're going to be able to do it. I could read my memo if you would like to hear it.
Well, you sent it to the board.
Yes, I did.
Yeah,
I sent it to the committee.
That's good on that.
And so I would like to ask the board to increase the 75,000 to 100,000 for the grant fund because of increased prices of increased area of coverage. There's 36 homes on Newport Road that will be served, and also 6 additional parcels on Bell Hill, which is going to be kind of an intermunicipal project there, due to the fact that Brown Road, or Bell Hill intersects with Brown Road and Graham. Actually, it's also the Skyview and the Newport, the Skyview Lane. There's quite a few houses there. The other issue is there's a great advance of land that's available, just sitting there, and people won't build because of the bad quality of water. This is basically the whole town, actually. So it's just wells are contaminated. They have lack of water, lack of potable water. Nobody's going to build. There's going to be people moving out, but there's such a large span of land. The Surgat family down Lower Graham Road owns a huge, vast amount of land. They're so anxious to sell. The homes that are there, people are moving out, and new people are moving in. They're not too happy. So, and there's a large farm. I would say semi-retired farmer. He's interested in selling above that area on Upper Graham Road. So actually, this would be all good area for people to build. Beautiful countryside. Newport Road, the same thing. There's parcels. There are parcels as well that are already on the tax rolls. The people have divided their lots. They're huge lots, but nobody will build there without water, without good water. So that too would be an asset to the water board as well as the town, because you'd be getting more. We would be getting more revenue from the water sales as well as from actually tax breaks for the residents. Payments to the bonds would be less. Taxes would be increased because of the extra people.
Water Authority too, once these,
Additional revenue.
there's gonna be additional revenue to the Water Authority too.
Yes. Yeah.
So I would move your request in a motion for your 100,000.
Is the town committed to go forward with this?
Well, if they weren't, we wouldn't take your money. Believe me. But we're very, very committed. You're not going to give us the money anyway until we're moving forward.
I'm just curious as to whether they have now committed to this.
Yes, we have an engineer on board, but at this point, when we found out what the total cost is going to be, it was so much more than it was, initially when we started this project like almost 2 years ago. And it's just exorbitant, and it's just going to be too expensive unless we get, more grant coverage or more grant funding.
Well, you've got your motion for the
The only
100,000.
thing is I would
Your
move that motion.
is pending
Pending.
approval of the town to move
Exactly.
forward with the project.
Exactly.
I'd also
Approve
like to see a
100,000.
time limit on it so that we have to revisit it, let's say 2 years.
2024.
That the town actually makes this application, because we've been kicking this thing around for 20 years. So if you guys who made that
I think
agree
that's
with that,
great.
That's
Uh,
We did have some holdups on the whole thing.
you got your thing, Betty. Does everybody understand the motion that it's got a first and a second? It's for $100,000. The town has to
Town
commit and
approval.
get this thing going within 2
2
years.
2 years.
We hope to get it going this year.
Any questions regarding this?
I would love the state to. The state is what created the problem from the beginning by killing our projects.
Well, they've given us so much money anyways. All those in favor? Anybody opposed? Thank you. Executive Director's report, Pat is really sick, so I'm sorry for that, but on the plus side, there's no report. Any old business?
I have a question.
Yes, Joe.
The, whatever became of that investigation on our software, was it for the?
That's something we're gonna be talking about in executive session.
Litigation.
Any other old business?
So it's progressed to litigation?
Well, no, we'll get to talk about it in executive session.
Got
Any new business? I need a motion to go into executive session to discuss labor negotiations and possible litigation. Thank you, Frank, Bruce. All those in favor? Anybody opposed? Thank you.